Morning, this is Ian R. Crane. It's the morning of Monday, 5th of March 2018. I trust that you've had an enjoyable weekend and have stayed warm. Well, the temperature this morning is a balmy 3 degrees, and as you can see around me, the melt has seriously kicked in. But what you may not be able to see behind me is the Third Energy well site here at Kirkby Misperton, and what we're looking at here is the final stages of the dismantling of the KM8 frack site. So Third Energy are no way going to be fracking here at Kirkby Misperton, not just anytime soon, but as Third Energy, never. Because this company is basically bankrupt. By all normal processes, it should be dissolved. But of course that might just be a little embarrassing for the government, so they're hoping that they can sort of keep it afloat a little while longer until everyone's forgotten who the hell Third Energy really were. So here's the company that were bragging just a few months ago, even a few weeks ago, that they would be fracking before Christmas of 2017. Well, you know, we always knew that there was a very real possibility that we would collectively find the Achilles heel of Third Energy, and it turned out that they had multiple Achilles heels, not least of course the gross incompetence of the CEO John Dewar, who finally fell on his sword before Christmas in fact, and then of course the gross incompetence of whomever took the decision to appoint Keith Cochrane, the failed director of Carillion, and to appoint him to the board of Third Energy. And then in desperate measures to try and appoint somebody who they thought would be able to tap in to some funding to keep them afloat. But the reality is they are history. And, you know, basically what we're witnessing here is the final wake. So it looks like the prop towers, the sand towers are coming down today. And I think there's still some water tankers on the site there, which are costing somebody about £1,000 a day, and of course Third Energy don't have jack, so I just hope those companies get paid. But more fool you for not looking into their accounts. And anybody who is contacted by any of the companies looking to start any fracking operations in the UK, you need to take a long look at their accounts, or you need to get an independent audit of their accounts before entering into any arrangement with them, or demand payment up front, because all of these companies are effectively on a financial knife edge. So over the weekend I've been participating in the deconstruction of the Kirkby Misperton protection camp, because having taken the field on December the 20th of 2016, we had always stated that we would only remain there until such time as either Third Energy had unfortunately done what they came to do, or we had been successful in effectively running them out of town. And of course, we have run them out of town collectively. That's the community here. And of course, the wider community, people all around the country who have picked up some of the challenges that have been thrown out to contact their MPs and to keep the pressure on central government to constantly review whether or not this was something that was appropriate. And what we're really seeing right now is a government, or certainly parts of the government, that realise that this industry is a dead duck. It's a non-starter. There is no social licence. In fact, you'll never ever hear the government talk about social licence anymore, because they know it's a complete waste of time. It's like asking someone to grant them permission to dump a whole bunch of toxic nuclear waste in their backyard. Oh, hang on a second, that's exactly what they're planning to do without your permission. So that's why we have to stay vigilant. But people from all around the country have contributed in the demise of Third Energy and ensuring that not only was 2017 a frack-free year for North Yorkshire, and in particular Kirkby Misperton, but that 2018, it is highly unlikely that there will be any frack operation here in 2018. And hopefully by then this whole sorry mess is pushed into the archives of failed political agendas. And you know what? The title of today's video at first I thought Theresa May needs your help in banning fracking, but Theresa May will do what she's told to do. I mean, I think we can clearly see from her recent interview to the Yorkshire Post that, you know, she's not really in the loop. Some people call her the Maybot, because that's all she appears to be. You know, is just a mouthpiece that trots out the script that's given to her. You know, one wonders, like a bit like Tony Blair, whether she has any capacity for recall or simply literally takes a briefing before she goes and spouts forth, and then 5 minutes after she's walked off platform, she's actually got no idea what she just said. But Greg Clark is a different kettle of fish. You know, all of the inside track that we get from Westminster, and for those who have known Greg in his earlier days in Teesside, is that he is a very smart kiddie, an ambitious smart kiddie, but nonetheless one that is sufficiently astute not to put his name to something like this. I mean, can you imagine? His career would have been over by, without any shadow of doubt, at the end of this year, had he signed off on this. But he didn't. He didn't. Although he has claimed that Third Energy met the 13 criteria, that the technical criteria, but I'll touch on that in just a little while later. But they certainly got nowhere near meeting his financial criteria. And of course, that is something that we need to determine exactly what it is, so that the other companies can be subjected to the same financial scrutiny. And although INEOS, of course, is a private company, and somehow I get the sense that Jim Ratcliffe may not be too happy with subjecting INEOS's complex corporate and financial structure to the scrutiny of BEIS or the Treasury. So we'll see how that plays out. But Greg Clark and his assistant, Claire Perry, Greg Clark is Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, and Claire Perry is the Minister of State. Now, in a recent question, or in response to some recent questions put by Dr. Sarah Wollaston, who is MP for Totnes and South Hams in Devon, and I have to say that it is really important to acknowledge the tremendous work of Frack Free Totnes and Frack Free Devon. And this is a group in a county, of course, that was under no threat whatsoever of being fracked. Yet they recognise the impact that this industry would have on the country, the negative impact if it managed to get a foothold. So they have absolutely been on the case. And to even persuade Sarah Wollaston to ask these questions has been a tremendous achievement, because I know for an absolute fact that about a year ago Sarah Wollaston went into Kevix, the secondary school in Totnes, to meet with the pupils there, and she opened the floor to questions, and she was asked specifically about the fracking agenda. And her response was the same old tired palliatives that Theresa May was trotting out to the Yorkshire Post, 10 days ago or so. So clearly the guys and girls of Frack Free Totnes and Frack Free Devon have encouraged Sarah Wollaston to think for herself. And she went into Parliament as a GP, a former GP, with every intention of trying to make a contribution to the refurbishment, revamping of the National Health Service, and she was kept well away from that initially. But now she does sit as the chair of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Health and Social Care. And in her capacity as both an MP and chair of that Select Committee, she submitted some written questions to Claire Perry. And basically the three questions were revolved around employment, the volume of frack waste that this industry will generate, and the disposal methods of that frack waste. And she actually referred to the report that was unearthed recently by Greenpeace, although still unpublished, I think, in its full capacity. But anyway, in that report, the estimated shale gas sites for 2020 was just 17. And I think that's unlikely, and probably today now. 30 to 35 gas sites by 2022 and 155 by 2025. Now, only in the world of fantasy could they ever believe that they can achieve those numbers, because after over 5 years now since the moratorium was lifted, they've achieved a big fat zero. And actually 2018 looks like being another big fat zero. But nonetheless, that is what they stated. She asked the government to respond. And on employment, Claire Perry put, there are no estimates at all on employment figures associated with this industry. So whatever happened to the 64,000 jobs that the Royal Society were saying this industry would generate just, what was it, 6 years ago in June of early 2012. So clearly they don't want to repeat the tired old 64,000 because they know it's a crock and they know that the anti-fracking community would just rip it apart. So rather than give any number, they just say, we don't know. Then in response to the volume of frack waste, the response was, the government has not made an estimate of flowback waste that would be produced from any shale gas development. What? So the most toxic element of this operation, and the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy has no estimate. And yet this is absolutely fundamental. And yet, you know, we are hearing every time that the Environment Agency and the Health and Safety Executive come out to these drop-in meetings, they blag about, oh yeah, how it's all going to be monitored, how it's all going to be controlled, how it's going to be disposed of. We'll come to that in a second. But basically, here's the government admitting that it has no clue about the volumes. And even if it did, what's going to happen to it? And the response here was regarding the frack waste treatment. Her response is, it is up to the operator to agree disposal methods with the appropriate regulators as part of their planning application for any future shale gas development. Well, this is a classic case of, let's pass the buck. Over there, no, look behind me. They've got responsibility for it. No. So once again, as we have stated all along, the problems that have arisen everywhere else in terms of disposal. So, you know, evaporation pits didn't work. Fortunately, they're illegal in Europe. But evaporation pits weren't dealing with it. So then they started pumping it down disused wells. And then they ran out of those. And, of course, it was triggering massive seismic activity right across the US, and particularly in Oklahoma, where they had 10,000 re-injection wells. And then, of course, because they still haven't got capacity to dispose of it, it's revealed that some 70+ million gallons of this, billion gallons is dumped into the Gulf of Mexico. And the British government has no clue how much frack waste is going to be generated or how the hell it's going to be dealt with. So, that being the case, what are the 13 technical criteria? Because clearly it didn't include plans to deal with the waste because they have no clue how it's going to happen. So maybe what we have to do to look at what the 13 criteria were is go to the hydraulic fracturing consent document, which was produced by the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy in February of last year, so just about a year ago. And if you go to that document, I'll put a link under this video, but there are 11 criteria plus 6A and 6B. Well, Third Energy, of course, have repeatedly stated that Greg Clark signed off on all 13 criteria. And if that is the 13 criteria, 11 plus 6A and 6B, then one wonders how the hell they met with the criterion of 6B, which says that the company has to have a scheme in place to provide financial or other benefit for the local area. Well, unless the criterion was so lax that it literally was, well, we're going to put a couple of itinerant workers in a local B&B. That's the community benefit. Oh, that's all right then, sign that one off. Somehow I doubt it. But how the hell, when a company cannot stand up to any kind of financial scrutiny, how can they have a scheme in place to provide financial or other benefit for the local community? Because it certainly isn't employment. So, how does it work, Greg? Obviously, freedom of information requests will be coming your way. And of course, you know, what we do need to know is how any company that has a debt ratio of over 100 times its annual revenue could ever consider that it can provide any financial benefit to the local community. So, what does this mean? Well, I think the responses to these questions are yet further indication that the British government is really looking for a way out. And as I said last Monday, I think it was, you know, Theresa May be being set up to be the hero of the British people, and particularly the anti-fracking community, by announcing in 3, 4, 5 months or whatever that she's listened to the people, and that she's decided that fracking has no future in this country because it will never have social license. Well, she'll do whatever she's told, she'll say whatever script she's given. So who's really driving this? I think it's Greg Clark, and Greg Clark has clearly enlisted the support of Claire Perry. And we do know that there are other MPs, and clearly Sarah Wollaston hasn't just asked these 3 questions, she's looked at this for herself, and she will be extremely concerned about the negative health impacts on communities all around the world. The increasing number of academic studies which prove that there are serious negative health impacts on communities who have the misfortune to live anywhere in close proximity to this abomination. And of course, there is the video that I linked to last week, and we'll do it again today, of Dr. Geraldine McCarran, who's a Belfast doctor currently working in Queensland, who put a 15-minute video up explaining or talking about her experiences of the massive increase in respiratory and circulatory issues with the amongst the residents of southern Queensland. So, where are we at? Third energy of history. Of course, Kevin Hollinsnake, the local MP here, should hang his head in shame, but that assumes that the guy is capable of actually any self-reflection and emotion, which he's not. I mean, that's why he was appointed into that role, to push this agenda. And you know, the guy will say, no, I really think it's safe, you know, it can be done safely as long as it's nowhere near me. But you know, you're not going to have that. But hopefully Kevin Hollinsnake and the people of Rydale will realise that this guy is simply a puppet to the corporatocracy. And come the first opportunity, whether that's the next election or whatever, then they bounce him out. Unfortunately, this is Tory heartland, and the observation around the area here is that you could put a stuffed monkey up with a blue rosette on it and it would still get elected. But hopefully people are starting to look a bit deeper. So, where are we at in the UK? Let's have a look at the other companies. iGas, which is where we're targeting right now at Misson Springs and Tinker Lane, they're just building the pads there. But you know, their financial position is not particularly great. Their stock price is currently 76p. That's about half of what it was a year ago. So the company has lost half of its market worth within the past 12 months. And it is barely 3% now of the market capitalization of 5 years ago. So surely, you know, Greg Clark should be demanding iGas submit their financial status for review now, rather than wait until they've built the pads and they bought the kitten, and then we have a situation like here at Kirby Misperton, where the kit sits there for 3 months, keeping the local residents on absolute tenterhooks, wondering whether they're going to be fracked or not. So I don't think iGas are really going to necessarily stay the course, and we'll obviously keep putting the pressure on that front. INEOS, well, of course, I've already mentioned that Jim Ratcliffe may have second thoughts when he realises that he's got to expose the web of the INEOS corporate structure and subject their finances to Treasury scrutiny. He may actually balk at that, so we'll see. But they're not going to be fracking anytime this year. Of course, they're trying to sue the National Trust to conduct seismic tests on National Trust property. They've demanded public inquiries with both Rotherham and Derbyshire. So local and national opposition to INEOS is mounting exponentially. So INEOS are still a major threat, but they're not going to be doing anything in 2018. So that brings us to Quadrilla over at Prestonwood Road, the company that, of course, brought about the moratorium in 2012 because, in 2011, because of their fracking operation at Priest Hall, where they knew they damaged the well, carried on fracking, gold standard regulation, and triggered the seismic events of April 1st and May 27th, 2011. Of course, that moratorium was lifted in December 2012, and Quadrilla are now back at Prestonwood Road thanks to Syed Javid, the Communities Minister, because he overruled Lancashire County Council, who had rejected Quadrilla's application to return or to go to Preston New Road and of course to Rossiter. So, you know, totally riding a roughshod over democracy. Now, Quadrilla are owned 25% by Centrica. Now, Centrica are crucial here because if Centrica pull the funding to Quadrilla, like Barclays Bank pulled the funding from Third Energy, it puts Quadrilla in a very, very precarious financial situation. And, you know, when Quadrilla announced that Centrica had taken an interest, they announced that they were paying £40 million in cash at the time, and that Centrica had committed to £60 million in the Bowland joint venture, that's effectively Preston New Road and Rossiter and anything beyond in the Bowland Shale, with a further 60 million if certain operational milestones are achieved, whatever they might be. So Centrica, who are losing downstream customers hand over fist, need to be reminded that the British public, and maybe we get some help from overseas as well, but the British public will not tolerate a corporation that is looking to effectively fund the devastation of large tracts of land across the north of England. So, Centrica, who are the companies that come under the Centrica banner? Well, number one, of course, is British Gas. So if you're a British Gas customer, then maybe you should consider moving away, because there's plenty of other cheaper options, but make sure that if you cancel your arrangements with British Gas, that you let them know precisely why it is that you're deciding to move to another supplier. Now, British Gas, I know, are making it difficult for people to leave, particularly if you have the misfortune to have a smart meter. That's a whole nother issue, but I would encourage people to do their own research on the negative health impacts of living in close proximity to smart meters. But anyway, British Gas are basically telling some customers that, I'm sorry, that if you decide to leave, we're going to have to charge you a small fortune because that's our smart meter. Well, hopefully the other companies will get in on that, and I think it's actually time to also target maybe get in touch with Ofgem and ask how it is that these companies can restrict the freedom of movement between suppliers by charging them excessive amounts because they've got that company's smart meter. So British Gas are the prime target in the UK, and I'm calling upon the very successful anti-fracking community in Ireland, because Centrica are also the owner of Bord Gas Energy in Ireland, the largest supplier of gas to consumers in Ireland. So maybe you can help us by contacting Bord Gas Ireland and telling them that basically you're going to consider moving away to another supplier due to Centrica's relationship with Quadrilla, who are currently, well, 15 months into a 6-month project to frack at Preston New Road. And in the US, it's Direct Energy. Now, Direct Energy are or claim to be one of the largest providers of energy in the US. So for anyone watching this in the USA, if you would like to help us in the UK, teach me, to help us in the UK keep the UK frack free. You know, well, the UK actually, it's England, because Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and of course the Republic of Ireland have all put effective bans in place. It's England that is under threat. And it's not just pockets of England, it's a very large tract right across the north of England, which is potentially putting some 20 million people at risk. So customers of British Gas, customers of Bord Gas Energy in Ireland, and customers of Direct Energy in the USA, we're calling upon you now to help us to pull the plug on the money supply to Quadrilla, and hopefully then the people in Lancashire can breathe easy for at least a while and enjoy the same experience as the people here in Kirkby, Misperton and North Yorkshire, and see Quadrilla depart with their tail between their legs, just like Third Energy are here. So we're at a very, very seminal time in the anti-fracking campaign in the UK. And the crucial element here is let's help the British government, because I believe that the British government is now starting to put out the information that is indicating that it has lost the enthusiasm, it's lost the motivation for this. It doesn't want to be the one to pull the plug, not without massive public support. So let's give them that support and let's get this abomination shut down once and for all, and then we can move on. Thanks for joining me this morning, and all things being equal, I will be back tomorrow morning at 8:30. Now, tomorrow morning, well, I am also at Northallerton, because you know, there have been claims that the anti-fracking campaign here at Kirkby and Misperton has not always been peaceful. Yet, the only aggressive behaviour has been demonstrated by the police and by the employees of Third Energy. And tomorrow, we have the Crown Prosecution Service bringing a case against a Third Energy employee who deliberately drove into one of the anti-frackers who was riding a bike. So that's the Crown Prosecution Service, that's at Northallerton Courts tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So tomorrow we will see whether justice is served, or whether, of course, the establishment just decides to try and shut this down. But either way, then the video of the incident will be on YouTube by tomorrow evening. Thanks again. Catch you tomorrow.